Welcome to Cinema Bites, your go-to for movie recaps in a flash. Big twists, epic moments, all in just minutes. The movie begins with a young man named Will, whose parents were incredibly fortunate because they were the strongest team in the world. They had defeated many villains and the whole world knew and loved them. However, at the same time, Will wasn't as fortunate as he hadn't yet discovered his true power and was always weak. He was scared of mosquitoes, and his parents, Steve and Josie, knew that he wasn't as strong as them, which was a story in itself. Their real estate dealings helped cover up their immense power as they bought and sold properties from the world's wealthiest. When Will trained in his room, he couldn't lift weights, and every time his father came in, Will would quickly grab more weights so his father would think he was very strong. Trina appeared tough. Will attended the same school as his parents and was proud to be following in their footsteps, thinking he would one day save the world when his father passed away. During one of their conversations, a girl named Layla, Will's classmate and childhood friend, appeared. Layla had grown up with Will, and her extraordinary power allowed her to bring plants back to life and stop them from dying. However, there was a great danger threatening the city at that moment. Here, Steve and Josie head out with Layla, and Will is very proud of them. However, at the same time, Will feels frustrated and hopeless because he still hasn't discovered any superpower within himself. Unlike his parents, they all head out with Layla to catch the bus to their new school. When they board the bus, Layla gets on, but the bus driver yells at Will for being late. The driver was acting crazy and treated all the students badly. At that moment, Will reveals that he is the son of Steve and Josie. The driver suddenly becomes very respectful and treats Will well. He even tells two students to give up their seats for Will and Layla to sit at the front of the bus. As they travel, all the students enjoy the trip, getting to know each other, unaware of what awaits them on their first day of school. Halfway through the trip, the driver changes the route, taking an incomplete road, and suddenly jumps the bus off a large bridge. At that moment, the bus transforms into a high-speed plane, flying straight to the new school, which is among the clouds in the sky. This school is a place for students with superpowers only. It gathers people who can freeze others, control fire, have stretchy bodies, and possess incredible speed and strength. That day was Will and his friends' first day at the new school. As with any new place, there had to be a proper welcome from the older students. Some troublemakers in the school tried to take money from Will and his friends, but the student council president stepped in and managed to keep them away. Will fell in love with her at first sight, dreaming of talking to her, though he feared she'd end up rejecting him later. After that, the school principal arrived, introduced herself to all the students, and informed them that there would be ability tests to divide them into two groups. If a student had rare and valuable powers, they would join the heroes team. But if their abilities were mediocre, they would be placed in the sidekicks team, who assist the heroes. The students were upset about this division, feeling it was unfair since it was only their first day, and some were too shy to show their true powers. A man dressed in a baseball uniform arrived to test and classify them. Somewhat like an old school coach, the first student stepped up, transforming into a massive giant, becoming a hero. The next student had the power to melt, but he was classified as a sidekick. Another girl also ended up being classified as a sidekick. Will was scared as his turn approached because he still hadn't discovered his special power, which would be a huge embarrassment since he was the son of Steve and Josie, the most famous action heroes in the galaxy. When it was Layla's turn, she nervously said her powers only manifested in certain situations, and people thought she was making excuses to avoid becoming a hero. She ended up in the sidekicks team as well. The bell for lunch rang right after. Before they headed to lunch, Will was told that after eating, it would be his turn to be tested, and he had to prepare himself for his potential failure. As they went to eat, his friends were expecting him to have incredibly powerful abilities, since he was the son of the strongest heroes in the galaxy. Even the bullies wanted him on their side, hoping he wouldn't turn against them later. While they were eating, an older student, Bess, gave Will a sinister look. When Will asked about it, his friends explained that Bess's father was once a powerful villain with extraordinary abilities. But Steve and Josie had captured him, and as a result, Bess's father had been imprisoned. Will realized that this history might make Bess hold a grudge against him. After lunch, they all headed to the field for the ability test, and just as Will had been warned, the coach began with him. Will tried to act modest and respectable, pretending not to reveal his massive power. The coach, along with the others, expected something incredible. As part of the test, he failed miserably, falling to the ground beneath the car, nearly getting crushed. The coach confirmed that Will had no special abilities, mocking him in front of his friends. They were all shocked and disappointed, gossiping about how the son of the most powerful heroes in the universe could have no powers at all. Will, humiliated, went to the school nurse to treat his injuries, realizing how rare it was for someone like him. born to famous heroes, not to inherit any powers. He desperately hoped to discover his abilities soon, fearing that his father would be furious with him if he remained powerless. At that moment, Will asked the school's doctor, who treated both heroes and sidekicks, if there was any way to ease the guilt he felt. For a brief moment, he wished he could just quit and run away from the responsibility. But then, when he saw his parents flying happily outside, proud that their son had finally made it to the school, he couldn't bring himself to tell them the truth. They believed he had made it into the heroes team, and Will stayed silent, not correcting their assumption. Later, his father, Steve, took him to a secret underground lab filled with the many monsters he and Josie had defeated over the years, along with the powerful weapons they had confiscated to prevent anyone from using them for evil. There, Steve showed Will a video that detailed his past victories and achievements, hoping to inspire him. Will, however, was overwhelmed, his mind racing with thoughts of how he could ever tell his parents that he had failed the ability test and didn't have any superpowers. Will's father noticed his son's interest in the lab and said he had always wanted to show it to him. Steve explained that the future was in Will's hands and that he needed to protect the city just like he and Josie had done. He also warned Will to never let anyone know the location of the lab and to trust no one. Afterward, they left the lab and went back to the house. That night, Will sat in his room, feeling down about what had happened at school. Suddenly, Layla appeared outside his window, climbing up from a tree. She sat with him, sensing his sadness. Will opened up about how disappointed he felt and how he had let everyone down. Layla encouraged him, telling him that he needed to be brave and tell the truth about what had happened at school, rather than letting the situation get worse. She reassured him that hiding the truth would only hurt him and his relationships with others in the long run. The next morning, they all returned to school, starting their first day in the sidekicks class. Layla was happy despite having superpowers, and she reassured Will that she wouldn't leave him and would always stay by his side. After school, Will invited Layla and his friends to his house to study. His father, Steve, joined them and began to get to know them, learning about their abilities. Steve was surprised by how simple their powers were and wondered how they could be considered heroes with such basic abilities. Will, encouraged by his friends, decided to come clean. But before he could tell his father the truth, Steve expressed his confusion about why Will was hanging out with sidekicks instead of real heroes. He couldn't understand how Will, the son of two of the strongest heroes in the galaxy, could end up in the sidekick class. Steve got frustrated thinking his son was a sidekick and not a true hero, but then softened, reassuring Will that one day he would discover his true power and become a hero. He emphasized that it didn't matter if Will was a sidekick now. He should be proud of his friends and their support. Steve tried to help Will understand that what truly mattered was their family, not just the powers. He didn't want to pressure Will, knowing that forcing him might push him away, so he decided to let him find his own path at his own pace. Later, Steve went to his wife Josie and confided in her, frustrated and disappointed that their son had failed to meet expectations and embarrassed them in front of the other heroes. But Josie reassured him, reminding Steve that their family was more important than having superpowers. She believed that Will would eventually find his strength and didn't want to push him too hard, fearing it might make him feel even more disconnected from them. The next day at school, while Will was walking with his food to sit with his friends, a group of bullies started picking on him. One of the bullies, Peace, began to chase him, throwing fire at him and taunting him. Will, terrified, ran and tried to hide under